lovely people of the internet. Let's see if FFG has gotten their shit together and is going to have a stable stream tonight. Hello, Dutch. Last night was terrible. The stream went up and down all the way, and then they just put a video up on YouTube. It was a bit frustrating. Shouldn't have been up at 2 a.m. for that. I hope you're all fine. I'm going to have a little drink, just to keep my sanity up and running. Maybe. So Dutch, how's your evening so far? Got anything painted? So same as me, nothing. I sometimes somehow can't get myself to pick up the droids that are on the left of me into my painting station to the right of me, and then to put them in front of me. Shouldn't be so hard, one might think, but it's yeah, not going well right now. Well, I hope these 2 minutes don't drag out too long. Otherwise I'll be sleeping. I'm guessing they will simply regurgitate everything they had yesterday in about 20 minutes, with maybe some questions from the chat. But, well, we'll see. Most fun thing will be with their streamers crashing again. That being said, tomorrow are 2 dates where I'm going to try to stream at 4 p.m. in the afternoon. There is going to be, oh god, I think there's the Armada and a 10 Legion, if I recall correctly. Hello, Laughing Boy. Now we are 3. Now we can talk about naughty things. It's a bit weird seeing people on stream wearing masks. I bet it's Tuffy, or myself somehow is registered as being present. Panzerkaputt. Evening. Oh, just making sure that I haven't muted them. Nope, everything's fine. Everything's fine. Nothing's going wrong. And in the stream yesterday, they had an awful audio issue with the head honcho. And it was really weird because it was terribly offset. When he talked, he had a lag of about a second until movement was seen on screen. Yesterday not, but today, Dutch. Today they seem to sit with 3 people on the table, as they usually do when they're talking about something.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the X-Wing live stream for GenCon Online.
Yes,
I am BK. I am joined here today by Max Brook, our X-Wing developer here at Fantasy Flight Games. We're very excited to be with you guys today to talk about some sweet, sweet X-Wing stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had our in-flight report last night. Had a lot of exciting announcements for X-Wing.
Yeah, John got to spoil the good stuff. But
yeah.
We get to follow up with some other good things.
Exactly, yeah.
Aren't you excited?
Manager there, John Schaefer, giving you guys all the good spoilers last night. But hey, we've got some pages here.
We do. We have pages.
Know, John didn't have everything. I hope you guys are ready for all the good stuff that's on these pages here. All right, Max, what do you say? You want to just hop right in there?
Yeah, let's get started. What do you want to talk about first? Do you want to start with the TIE Brute?
Well, let's just hold off on the TIE Brute.
Yeah,
Let's go in order. I know you guys are excited about the TIE Brute. I'm very excited about the TIE Brute.
That's fair. That's fair.
But John talked about the first part of Wave 7 last night. that has already been announced. So we've
the
got
execution
the
is missing.
G-class shuttle. We've got the Lad-Eye gunship. We've got the HMP gunship. Those are coming to you guys very soon. We'll talk about that a little bit later.
But
we're gonna talk about some of the upgrade cards and everything that you guys are gonna see in those expansions. So let's jump right in with the G-class shuttle.
Also, I have seen...
so we're going to have preview... I think John actually mentioned this.
Also, I had seen some Canadian streamers having pre-text in their YouTubes with, we are abiding to the laws.
On our website for that. And
just to remind everyone what this shuttle is, this is a shuttle that was briefly flown by Finn and Rose in The Last Jedi.
That's right.
The one that they took to Crate. But it's also appeared a number of times in the comics. I think it's shown up in the Poe Dameron comics and in other places. And it's generally been around in the sort of secondary material. So we have a pretty good idea of what it does.
Exactly. Yeah, I have this like really great moment I remember in The Last Jedi where like they're flying and the door is like, the blast door is shutting and they're like, oh, we gotta make... Anyway,
we don't have mechanics for that yet, but maybe we'll do a scenario.
Maybe, yeah, that'd be cool. Anyway, yeah, so we've already shown you a few things from this. I remember way back during our Adepticon live stream, we showed Agent Terex. We revealed that he was going to be one of the crew members with the shuttle. Now, we're actually... So there is a reverse side to this guy.
Yeah, so we've got our cyborg version of Agent Terex. Yeah. Terex he's a pretty interesting card because he's this schemer, you know, and he's the character from the comics. He's fairly fleshed out. He actually has quite a bit of panel time. He's sort of this recurring enemy of Poe Dameron and Black Squadron, but he's also always like sort of infighting with other people within the First Order. And so eventually Commander Malorus has him turned into a cyborg, so he'll stop being so disloyal, and then of course he betrays her again. So we wanted to really get that whole character arc into this card. So we've got the one side where he starts out, he's got these calculate tokens he gets to pass out, and then he flips into this cyborg side eventually when his schemes run out. And he, you know, like becomes this, like, he's forced to be loyal, but he's not exactly loyal. He can sort of mess with you.
I've lost track
you know, he generates this randomized token, and then if you have an action, you can potentially get rid of it if it's a bad token, or throw it to another ship or something. But it's random what the token is, and then you need to have something in range. So he's got this whole set of things where, like, he can be good for you, he can be bad for you. He's sort of a wild card.
Yeah, a little bit of a wild card. I do really like that, though. That was one of the things that struck me, like, when I first saw this. It's like, okay, like, oh, it's kind of bad if you get like that token, but then it's like, oh, action, you can like transfer it to another ship, so you can still kind of like mess with people.
Exactly. Well, and on top of that, you can also transfer the calculate token. So let's say you have another ship that you want to, you know, the G-class shuttle is a support ship predominantly. It's not really a fighting ship. It's got guns, but it's not especially dangerous.
People said, oh, I love
but,
that.
You know, let's say you've got your, TIE silencer set up somewhere. You want to throw a calculate token over there. You can set that up, and if you roll well, you get that. If you don't, maybe you can throw the jam token onto an enemy ship to help protect that silencer.
Exactly.
But you might also get nothing.
Yep.
So,
and it does have that...
you always did something. Sorry, actually, you always did something.
And it does have that range of 0 to 3, so you can extend this out if there, you know, if you do get the jam token, which normally jam is like pretty limited range there.
You can get this out a bit further.
Very nice. So in addition to Terex, we also have some other First Order kind of VIPs that can go with the shuttle, including Commander Pyre, who has some really interesting... he affects things from the very start of the game, right at setup. So let's take a look at him.
Yeah, so Commander Pyre is from Star Wars Resistance. Commander Pyre is one of the recurring antagonists in Resistance.
Has anyone watched Resistance?
And Pyre is sort of this, like...
I haven't.
Sort of this lesser version of Phasma in some ways. But Pyre is also very, like, sneaky and tends to use, like, hostages and such to try to get the advantage. And so we wanted to sort of reflect that, where, like, Pyre is one of those... We have some of these in the Empire, we have some of these in the First Order, these cards that really like put pressure on the enemy force. But one thing we hadn't really done with is anything that like puts that pressure on at the start of game. And that's sort of a sub-theme of First Order. First Order has the hyperwave comm relay that lets them getting closer. It has the aerodynamic dormants that lets them getting closer to the hyperwave comm relay that lets them get resources at setup. It's got some other abilities that affect setup.
That doesn't look right.
And so it's got some other cards in this product that affect setup in some interesting ways, but we'll get into those later.
Yeah, sure.
But this is one where, like 2 stress tokens at setup is really not too bad. Like, it's not too bad a penalty, but it means you can't come in fast.
Exactly.
Or you have to think pretty hard about it if you do. So it's going to force one of the enemy ships to slow roll, and it sort of creates this dynamic where you're thinking about, like, okay, so I'm going to drop this on one of the enemy ships, and then maybe I'll try to single one of these other ones out, or, what have you. So it's got this interesting dynamic.
If they will.
Yeah, it's really kind of interesting, like first order thing of like messing with people right from the get-go. I was like,
disappearing.
Nice.
Exactly. Well, and that also plays to the fact that like the first order isn't as like militarily dominant in the galaxy as the Empire. They have to rely more on sort of like sabotage and dirty tricks, and they have this almost kind of scummy angle, but we don't want to impinge too much on scum. But they have this sort of angle of like, they're acting, outside of the galaxy a lot of the time. They're sneaking around. They're, like kidnapping people to build up these like secret armies. But they're not like acting in the open like the Empire did, where they just went around blowing up planets.
Yes. Very cool. So the G-class shuttle, a ship that has a lot of room for carrying crew members.
Yep.
Things like that. Moving on to the Republic side, we have the Lad-Eye gunship, which is also something where you can get a lot of gunners, you can get a lot of crew members, things like that. And
I couldn't tell you if there's
probably pretty obvious, we can get both I know there were some missions with Jedi on there, including one of my favorite clones, Clone Captain Rex.
Yeah,
a really interesting ability here.
Yeah, so Captain Rex was a lot of fun to design, and there was an earlier, there was a Captain Rex in first edition. He messed with spending results as well, and so that was the later Rex. He appeared as a crew for Rebel, and so we wanted to come back to that idea, but his ability wasn't very strong in first edition, so I wanted to try to take another swing at something like that where you spend results. It also feels very cloney because they have this like precise training, and they're very like good at using the resources they have. They're very resourcely. They're very like able to act. So act decisively. So for Rex, you've got this ability where you can spend your focus results, and you can like let other ships take that focus action.
They really have.
So it sort of sets up this nice thing of like, oh, maybe, like if my ship doesn't have a focus token or whatever, I can get something out of this if I've set up right. So it makes Rex this sort of like coordinating leader, and you want to kind of play stuff around him.
Yes, yeah, very nice. And it's been pointed out in the chat, but we also have Clone Commander Cody as a gunner in X-Wing as well, which is very cool. So you can kind of play with both of those guys on different, two different lats maybe or something.
Yeah.
It feels like forever.
Yeah, so there's a lot of interesting opportunities there, or like a Latin in Arc 170.
Yeah, I'm a big Cody fan in X-Wing. I feel like. I mean, maybe. Yeah. Anyway,
I'm under the impression these guys want to show off knowledge they don't possess.
I think so.
So he's pretty good.
8 minutes in total.
So Captain Rex, a gunner. Now we want to talk about a crew member. We kind of tease that some Jedi are in here.
Oh yes.
Probably the card that I'm most excited about in this expansion.
The Jedi.
Yep, the Jedi, the Grand Master of the Jedi Order. Yoda is coming to you guys in the Lat-Eye gunship expansion, and first one, the first crew member that actually gives you 2 Force tokens is the first thing that kind of jumps out.
Is he
not really?
I think so.
Does Snoke?
I thought Snoke only gave you 1.
Maybe Snoke only gives you 1. I have to double check that.
Let's see.
But yeah, so Yoda, 2 Force on a crew member, pretty potent. He's not going to cheap.
How's this?
But his ability is actually interesting because his ability is not. So he's got that purple coordinate, which is nice, obviously. And because the lat doesn't have, like a baked-in coordinate, it's nice to get that. But the other thing you get out of that that's really nice is his ability to relieve other Jedi and sort of mentor them and like help them, spend their force more efficiently or spend his force in their place.
I'm just realizing they're not even talking about the things they have revealed last
ships with
last night.
purple maneuvers, which we don't have any of in the game yet, but we will.
They are actually talking about the upcoming releases that are
and so it really opens up to your dial possibilities and gives you some nice options.
This is going to be bad.
Making him play a little bit like the Force version of Leia Organa.
Well, that my voice isn't much to talk home about
again,
either.
He's got that 2 Force, which is just really nice.
Yeah, you can't do anything.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like this card's going to be super flexible for the Republic. You can put him on. You can put him on the LAT. You can put him on the ARC 170. And get a bunch of other Force users in there. I can't even remember because it's been so long, since the Adepticon stream. But we've already spoiled a couple of the other Jedi that are in this pack.
Sort of stable.
There's going to be a couple others that are going to be revealed in just about a month.
We'll see if this stays
and
cool.
we might have some more Jedi even coming later on in the stream
that
we'll talk about.
There's just no shortage of Jedi in the future. There's plenty of Jedi.
Yep. So Yoda, he might come in handy in Republic lists coming up here.
I think he'll be useful. And then next, we want to talk about the repulsor lift stabilizers.
If
you look at their little window, there's one thing that annoys me a bit. Both people are wearing masks.
It can be used in atmospheric
then why
combat.
does he have a bottle of water in front
one
of
of
him?
the really cool
How
things
will
about
he
it
drink
that we
with the
haven't
mask on?
quite revealed, I know we've kind of teased it for a while here, is it actually also introduces
to be fair, he could try to suck it through the mask.
It's a new maneuver. So we don't do this often, obviously, but we occasionally do want to, throw in a new maneuver to spice things up and keep things interesting. So it allows you to side slip. So the side slip is not a maneuver that will probably ever appear on a dial.
This is a kind of upgrade card only type thing.
Yeah, it's a special maneuver. That certain ships will be able to do. And it's the defining feature of this ship's sort of like really unique flight pattern. And so, do you have the graphic?
We do have the upgrade. Oh, we do have the diagram as well. But yeah, so the kind of way the upgrade that gives us
we
this
are
unique
prepared, but we can't show.
Yes.
Oh, no, we can show.
Repulsor lift stabilizers.
Yeah.
And it starts off at setup. It's inactive, which does this interesting thing where it reduces the difficulty of all your straight maneuvers, and then after you execute a maneuver, you can flip it. And
so you have to telegraph that you're going to side slip, because obviously it's quite potent to be able to do this weird, unexpected new maneuver.
Calling that
so you have to telegraph it basically the whole turn in advance. Like, I want to be able to do this.
As far
and
as
then
I
after
remember,
you do that, you can flip
law
it
of Star Wars
and
only
get to the other
work
side.
when there's something to be repulsed against.
The side slip, which is this cool kind of
some massive
strafe where you can strafe around a target that's coming in at you. It's like a barrel roll, but with the bank maneuver template, and it goes longer.
Yes, and you have to go. Yes, it goes longer,
and
you have to
logic
sort
and
of
reason,
move forward
science.
using it. So the reason I was asking about the graphic is because the side slip is very easy to explain with a graphic and very hard to explain with just words or text. But basically, you loop around the side. It's like a barrel roll. You can't go backward. And so it allows you to sort of rotate around something, or and do this spin in and flank something. So it's really flexible. It's really interesting.
And
it creates a lot of interesting opportunities at the table. But one of the things we were trying to make sure was
make up his
really
mind if he
locked
wants
into
to
this
have
is that you have
to
telegraph that you want this option. If you do the bank or turn,
that's not how a grown man should look like.
So you can't fake your opponent out that you want to side slip and then not side slip unless you want to go straight.
Somebody at FFG seems to know how to stream, but not the guys
your opponent
themselves.
Can say, okay, so I know that you have the option to side slip.
To be fair,
or you could
I'm
go
guessing
straight.
if they were sitting in front of an audience at GenCon right now,
really
they would have a sort of a back and forth with the audience.
But it is still a pretty new thing. So people will, I think, have a pretty interesting time, learning to play around this, learning to deal with it. But we really put this through paces with the testers, and we did a lot of iteration, and we
the barrel roll was
came to a version that people enjoyed playing against, enjoyed playing with, generally found was pretty fun at the table. So I feel pretty good about this.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what people do with this. I think people are going to come up with some real cool ways to side slip. So. We actually do have a couple questions coming in from the chat. Obviously, the side slip is kind of a big deal. It's a new type of maneuver.
Yep.
So, as we said, it's kind of like a barrel roll where you have to like line it up with the little hash mark there.
Yep.
Like a barrel roll, can you do 3 different like finishing positions where you kind of go forward a little bit, or in the middle, or in the back?
You're just middle to middle.
Just middle to middle. Okay, so you don't have quite as much control over like where you wind up as a barrel roll.
Yeah.
Okay, and then going back to talking about Yoda, and maybe we can get into this when we, maybe when we get a little bit farther into this live stream.
Yeah.
But there was questions about. I mean, you mentioned purple maneuvers.
This thing is going
I think we should
longer.
put pen and purple maneuver discussion. We're gonna get there.
Okay, so we'll just wait. We'll hold off. We'll come back. We'll talk about purple maneuvers here in a little bit. All right.
I love Star Wars. I've been collecting X-Wing since day one, but
another
these
question
guys
about,
aren't selling it
more questions coming in about the side slip. If you do a side slip, what would happen if you would bump?
You resolve the bump as normal. So because you have to go middle to middle, you can end up in a definite position. So you just take the side dots and you resolve the bump as you would.
That's, to be fair, the question
normally.
probably was asked before they have shown that diagram.
Go back,
FFG streams aren't really quick on picking up questions.
Let me just make sure. Yep. All right. I think that was a big question. So.
But yes, you can partially complete a side slip. That is a mechanically significant thing, and that's the reason it's not just a barrel roll, because we would have had to explain that it was a barrel roll that you were allowed to partially complete, that was done with this weird template, and you couldn't go backwards, and we realized partway through working on it that it was going to be way easier to just call it something new. And then it became a maneuver, which actually made a lot of things easier from that standpoint.
So maneuver as opposed to an action that you can fail, and then things get a little dicey.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure. Okay. All right. So I think, the side slip, very cool.
The HMP gunship is also just a ship I'm excited about on a number of levels. And one of the cool things that actually comes across in this art is we see both the missiles and the lasers.
Yes.
And they're not showing the art for us to see.
It also is one of those Separatist ships, in keeping with the theme of many Separatist droid ships, where it has a couple different setups in its upgrades, depending on which version you're using. So there's a version that can swap out some of its equipment for other things.
Ooh,
so it has some of the slot substitutions.
I couldn't tell you, Taffy, if they had coffee or anything else.
And some of the other ones.
Maybe they have been locked up in the room for too long.
So I won't spoil what those are, but stay tuned. It isn't just a missile boat.
Yeah. There's a lot of cool stuff. I mean, so.
And also, these printouts don't really inspire confidence
so you guys won't have to wait too long on that one. All right, so let's move into some of the really new stuff. Obviously, everybody's known about these 3 for a while now.
Yeah, these are old news.
Yeah, let's talk about the stuff that was just announced last night, starting off with the TIE Brute.
So to start off with the TIE Brute, this thing is huge. It's way bigger than I thought it was. When I started working on it, I was like, it's probably about this big. No, it's bigger. It's bigger than you think it is. You're going to see the miniature, and you're going to say, isn't that too big? And it's actually that big.
That
we spent a lot of time with
wasn't there
on this.
before.
It's
and the
huge.
TIE Brute actually is a complete new
medium base, right, ship. As seen in Solo, the really cool chase through the Kessel Run, going through the Maw and everything. One of the cool things I like about this ship is it seems like it's almost very similar to an RZ-2 A-Wing or a TIE SF, where it has the rotating cannons that can go front or back, but it's a lot bigger than those ones. So tell me a little bit more about that.
They have chosen to put it on a small base and not on a medium base.
The rotating cannons are a thing we wanted to play with when we found out that ball turret could spin backward and forward.
A big TIE, but he has a rotating double-barrel gun on his left side.
Yes, it can.
That can shoot backwards.
So, it can actually... it's still good if you have a little turret arc indicator, but you can also flip it back, just show where you're pointing it.
So, as soon as we found out it had that capability, we were like, oh, great. Well, we've already figured out how to do this for secondary weapons. This thing has some big honking cannons on that thing, so let's give it the cannon slot and have it have these rotating cannons where it can flip that back and forth. So it was a really nice way to just take a mechanic we already had, tweak it a little bit, and put it in, and now it suddenly plays a totally new way.
And some other details are actually working on some minis, so
front arc requirement of your
really stepped up the game in production with these X-Wing minis.
Turret arc. So I hope I am not ruining this for anyone, but you cannot put a heavy laser cannon on there and then fire it out the back.
Okay, you actually anticipated some questions that I'm seeing in the chat there.
Yes.
There is no bullseye arc out the back.
Now, you can take a heavy laser cannon and throw your guns to back, and the heavy laser cannon stays in front.
Okay.
So you can use that to get a little more coverage if you want, but it won't give you a heavy laser cannon that gets your full rear arc as it's firing.
Okay, yeah. That would be really good.
That would be really good. That's the reason we didn't do that.
Yep. And you actually can see, so the rotating cannons is the ship ability, and we'll actually just right now, let's take a look at Rampage.
Yeah.
Very interesting Initiative 4 pilot for the TIE Brute.
Yeah. So the TIE Brute is interesting because per the visual dictionary for Solo and the other like good sources we had for it, it's very much supposed to be a ship that can like operate on its own. Like it doesn't need a carrier ship necessarily to be like a pretty functional patrol ship, which is very different obviously from the TIE LN fighter or even like the TIE Interceptor and some of the souped-up varieties that don't have a hyperdrive. So it's meant to like operate on its own. It has this droid built in that's like almost like an Astromach.
Yes.
Only it's like a gunner droid or like a flight assistant droid or whatever.
I shouldn't be saying this,
and then
but
it
I
has
think
this
there
built-in
would
droid
be people
co-pilot,
more
which is
suitable
represented
for the
through
job these
configuration.
guys are doing.
And then it
don't
has,
let developers talk
you know,
about
like it's just
their product.
big and
Get some
beefy,
from
and it
marketing.
can take a lot of punishment.
It's a reason why
when
they're
you
there.
see them on the
getting
Kessel
paid.
Run flying, you know, through that, you know, like asteroid field and what have you. Like these are ships that you know can undertake those long missions on their own.
Yeah, it's getting hit by all kinds of debris and stuff as it's flying through there, so it can handle a little bit of punishment.
Exactly. So like obviously with 8 hull, it is the
A-hole.
beefiest,
He said a-hole.
you know, like unshielded TIE fighter, I think by a fair margin.
Yeah, I mean,
It might just be the beefiest TIE fighter, period, but there's a lot of there's the Punisher, I guess.
the
Punisher is, what, 8, 7?
it's got to be up there, yeah.
It's close. It's comparable to the Punisher.
Yep.
But yeah, and then Rampage. So we obviously didn't have like a ton
If they had a script
like
Dutch,
really
I
specific
think they would
characters
have
to fly
looked up
this thing.
things
This is
like
gonna be another one
stats
where
of the
we're-
Punisher
again,
and
Codenames.
everything.
We did have
I
one.
could
there
grab
is a
behind me
named
and try
person who
getting
showed
the
up
card
in some
out,
comics.
but I can't be
So
asked.
we'll get into them later.
Yep.
But Rampage is a you know sort of a classic codename character. But we wanted to base this on what we saw in the film.
I feel this will be a very
and
long
so, you know, we saw
hour
that this is like a
and
ship
very
that's really
short
aggressive
year.
in its pursuit. And so with Rampage, it was like, all right, well, what about an ability where, you know, if you fly right at the enemy, you can give them strain tokens. And then, like, some stuff went around on this, and, you know, we realized this thing had so much hull that it's like, this is going to be damaged a lot of the time. It's got 1 agility, high hull, and, like, the only thing scarier than one of these things flying towards you is one of these things flying towards you if it's on fire.
Oh, that would be hilarious,
And it just
Tuffy.
doesn't stop coming.
Getting
and
the
so
troops
I
It's
like
going to keep
to
coming no
ingest
matter
some
what.
Yeah.
Yep.
loosening up
So I like
drugs.
the idea of this sort of like, you know, pursuer,
Hey,
this
Dr.
implacable
Fowles,
pursuer
welcome.
is the subtitle. So that's how we got
American
Rampage.
beer, isn't that some
and
kind
it's a pretty
of
fun ability. It's
oxymoron?
fairly hard to trigger, but it's really good if you do.
Yes.
Especially if you can set it
Currently
up
I'm
in
having Irish
combination with an
beer,
attack
so-
from a couple other ships. Or like a particularly
I'm
nasty,
hoping
you
your
know,
streaming
like attack you
is
set up
going
if you
well.
manage to pick up a lock in a previous turn or
Sadly,
something like that.
today,
You can get that
the
-1
FFG
agility
stream
and
is a
also
bit
get your
dull.
rerolls.
Yes. Yeah.
So there's some pretty nasty stuff you can do, but you do have to fly pretty well to land it, and it's easier to land on some ships than others. It's better
these
pursuing
masks
like
are
medium
really
and large
putting
ships
me
than it
off.
is at small ships if they don't want to be
Sure.
pursued. So
And you did mention the droid intelligence that almost kind of serves as a co-pilot.
Yeah.
There are 2 different versions of that configuration that you can use.
That
in
you
this
can't be too
expansion.
harsh by saying
We're not
a bit
showing one
dull.
on the stream, but like I said,
Because
immediately
they
after this
have
live stream, I'll have the announcement article for all of
1,358
these
viewers,
new
so
ships up.
somebody
and in
must
there,
like
you'll
it.
be able to take a peek at one of those new configurations, which is I think that's just like a nice little cherry on top of the TIE Brute. In my
No
opinion.
worries,
yeah,
Doctor.
no, those configurations
two
are a big part of
don't
it.
really
You know, we spent a lot of
seem
time
to
thinking
know
like,
what
should
they're
the
talking
cannons be the
about.
config or should the droid be the config? And we eventually decided like the droid should be the config because it seems like there might be variants without it, whereas the cannons seem kind of integral. And also the cannons match the other like config or ship abilities we've done in the past for that.
Yeah, for sure. So all right, I think that's enough with the TIE Brute for now,
Yes, it is.
right?
Yeah,
Yes,
I
it
mean,
is.
this is the first ship we've had for Imperial players for a while.
Next.
So
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's
I'm not sure enough can be said of the TIE Brute, but in the name of time, we
No,
should probably-
Tuffy,
It's true, yeah, we
dishwasher
should-
water
that's
is
a
not
good point,
entertaining.
yeah.
Because
Sorry,
if
TIE
I
Brute.
see dishwasher water,
We're
my
gonna move
dishwasher
on.
is broken.
And so let's talk about Heralds of Hope. This really kind of
Yeah.
interesting new squadron pack for the Resistance, where you're getting 3 ships.
Yep.
You're getting alternate paint schemes
Yep.
for 2 new alternate paint schemes for the T-70 X-Wing.
Yep.
1 alternate paint scheme.
A brave
for
paint scheme,
the
I have to say.
Wing,
Yep.
All based on their appearance in Rise of Skywalker.
Yep.
Which is very cool. What are some of the other things that you can kind of expect just generally
I'm really fond
in
of
this
that orange.
Well, it's got a lot of upgrade cards. It's meant to be like a solid starting point where, like,
probably
you know,
not.
If you, I mean, part of
Tournament
the point of
players
these, you know,
in
is we've definitely heard from people like, oh, I'm interested in getting into
almost
X-Wing,
as
but I don't
bad
necessarily
as
want to play Rebels or
GW
Imperials.
tournament players.
Do I still need a core set? And, you know, at this point,
there were things
you
happening.
actually don't strictly. I mean, the
in
core
the
set is
last
still a really
tournament
good
I
value,
attended
especially if you
that
have someone to
was.
split it with. But
I was just
you
constantly
can buy
shaking my
premium
head.
maneuver template, you can buy the dice, you can buy the damage deck, and if you pick one of these up, you've pretty much got most of what you need for a 200-point squadron.
Yeah, it's like really cool. Yeah, I mean,
Dice,
especially
FFG,
I mean, we just had Rise of Skywalker. Just, I mean, I guess it's been
one of
a little
their
bit over
product
6 months
schemes
ago.
has
But
enough
these new
dice
paint
in it.
schemes. The other really cool thing in there is we have new pilots for all. Well, not for all, but for both of these different ships. And mixed in there, new versions of a couple classic heroes, including Poe Dameron. You want to talk about Poe a little bit?
Yeah.
Like this ability, it's very similar to his original ability, but it has maybe a little bit more utility.
It is, yeah. So let's talk about new Poe and new Snap. So Poe Dameron, obviously, he is.
The last time I can remember, they put a
character.
new version of a pilot, and the old version was totally
you know, so we have
blasted.
subtitles. Part of the reason we have subtitles is because of first edition Poe, actually.
Yes.
Because you may remember with first edition Poe, it was printed at at pilot skill 8, which was obviously not the right pilot skill for him after we saw that movie. We later printed a version of him at pilot skill 9. And that led to the conversation for second edition that went like we need subtitles so we can differentiate between versions of characters.
Yes.
So while Poe's not the first character we've gotten multiple iterations of, he is a great example of why to do it. So, you know, our first Poe is the, you know, like hotshot flyboy Poe. He's, you know, like a little cocky, but he's really the best.
Yes.
Like he's just so good on his own. But he doesn't do much for his teammates. And so what we wanted to do with this version of Poe was do a version that shows his, you know, sort of like growth and character development to being more of a commander, being more leaderly, knowing how to take risks properly and make good decisions.
I'll do
so applying those lessons he learned in The Last Jedi and then leading the way we see him do in Rise of Skywalker. And so, you know, we have this version of Poe that's got an ability much like his old ability, but he can, you know, now share it with his friends, but he can't do it as often.
Yes.
He can still use it himself, too. But again, he can't do it as often. So if you just want to have the Poe who is like the
poor people.
best individual pilot you could have, you probably want to go with the earlier Poe.
Version, yep.
But if you want to have a Poe who has a lot more
preparation.
squad synergy and can really do a lot more with teammates,
only show
you know,
the new
then
and the
that's what the new
shiny
Poe
and
is
make
for. And that's sort of what we want to do with multiple iterations of characters, is like really have each one have their own niche and have a, you know, like a way that they are, you know, like a thing that they're the best version of that character for.
I'm beginning to think.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like it's a nice character arc. I mean, you kind of mentioned, like, yeah, he's learned some lessons, maybe perhaps throughout his journey here.
But
now we have this character arc where
going to soldier through
Poe is really taking on this role of, like, I'm going to become a leader in the Resistance. And I'm going to be able to help out my, like, teammates and get them to do extra actions.
We get to see that at the Battle of Exegol, where he's, you know, like, commanding. And then, speaking of, we also have Temmin Wexley. We have a new version of him.
We get a new version of Snap.
And his Shuttle colleague.
And so we have... Temmin Wexley is a character who has a ton of backstory.
Correct.
But it's almost all in secondary material. So obviously, like, you know, we first meet Snap Wexley in the Aftermath novels, and then he appears a lot in the Poe Dameron comics. Well, and one of the things that comes up frequently about his character is that he's sort of a tech whiz. And so we wanted an ability that also reflected like that side of him, because his previous ability is good. It's a very solid ability and it's fun, but it doesn't necessarily get across that aspect of his character. And that's, again, the nice thing about being able to do multiple versions, especially when we have like a good reason to, like,
a silver leg maybe.
Paint schemes and this whole, like, the appearance of the character in a new form of media and all that. When we have a chance to do that, we get to, like, play to a different side of their character.
Yes.
I really want to paint that some green now.
This time we get to play to, and I wanted to do something that played around with configs for X-Wings.
Since it's terrain,
because X-Wing configs are obviously this big part of second edition.
Something different.
One of the most exciting things is
be
the wings
sitting on the
on
table
the
as a marker.
And so having someone who can play around with that,
at least in Legion, the players are still somewhat relaxed and having fun,
card
even if they're starting
the
state
gaming. Of your S-foils in this product.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
There is another card that we'll get to show off later that also cares about the state of your S-foils.
Interesting. Yeah. So I like snap. I mean, I guess it's not just locking your S-foils in attack position. You could also
snap them in attack position.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. All right. I like that.
Oh gosh.
You got me all distracted now with your puns here.
I thought you were setting that up for me.
You know what? I didn't mean to, but I'm glad I did. So we've talked about Poe. We've talked about Snap. Two pretty big, recognizable resistance pilots.
Yep.
Let's go in. Let's talk about some of the other kind of maybe lesser known pilots that are in this pack. Let's start off. Let's go with Merle Cobbin, I think is how you pronounce it.
Merle Cobbin, one of our friends from the Visual Dictionary.
Yes, yeah. He is a Initiative 1, but works as like a really good blocker perhaps in an RZ2.
That's the idea. So Merle Cobbin is, we were
I think it's an upgrade.
Working on new RZ2 abilities, and we had these names and brief character profiles from the Visual Dictionary and such, and so we had like resources, but obviously this isn't a big personality like Poe, so to some extent the ability has to really get across a lot of this character's personality because it's going to be most
calculate is an action.
And so Merle is this reckless flyer.
Pilots can calculate using advanced computing power to increase their combat performance. When a ship performs the calculate action, it gains one calculate token. The ship is
just gets right in there. But
calculate tokens are circular grid tokens, and calculate ships follows these rules. So it's a mechanic.
So you have this really interesting incentive where you basically want to give your opponent a great shot potentially.
Yep.
Just let them have all their bullseye abilities, but hopefully. You've set up something else where it's but if they shoot at Merle, then they're not shooting at someone more valuable, or they maneuvered to be able to shoot at Merle, and now other ships can capitalize on it. But you also have to keep him alive, until those ships go, so there's a bit of a trade-off there too.
Exactly.
But Merle would be a pretty good pair with Poe, actually, because you could do some pretty neat stuff with, throwing Merle some actions to, get into position.
Get that position, yeah.
Exactly. And then, setting up just a devastating attack from Poe, because, of course, Poe's got the weapon hardpoint.
Is there a country singer called Merle Dutch? I don't know.
Well, it's primary attack only, so you couldn't do that, but you could still throw down 4 dice at range 1. Especially if you used
time is up,
in a minute to get in close.
Next.
Yes, yep. Yeah, Distracting Daredevil. Nice work on the subtitle for that one, I just want to say.
I'm pretty happy with that one.
Next
so yeah,
is
let's
the
actually
Droid Tri Fighter.
Let's talk about some of the upgrades here. So obviously this is mainly a pack focused on the Resistance.
Yep.
But Rebels are also going to get a little bit of help in here. We're talking about the RZ2 here. We have this upgrade card, the Starboard Slash, which can, as you notice, everybody at home, it just says A-Wing down there. So RZ1s can use this as well, right?
So one thing we're really trying to push is the sort of flavor and identity of different types of ships. And the idea that flying a Y-Wing is not the same as flying an X-Wing. Obviously, the dial gets that across in part, the action part gets that across in part, but also, if you're a good pilot, you'll learn to do things with certain ships that you can't do with others. You'll learn to do these cool signature maneuvers and all that. There have been a few of them that have come up in various media, one of which is another card that appears in this product.
Yes.
But the Starboard Slash is a new one that we talked to LFL about, and they were okay with us naming it that.
Okay.
And the idea is the A-Wing is very much supposed to be this disruption ship. Both variants of it. It's an interceptor. It really gets in your face. It harries the other side's fighters. It can go after their bombers if need be, or it can keep their escorts off of your bombers, or it can keep their interceptors off of your bombers. But basically, it's meant to get up there, be aggressive, get in their face, and cause them problems. And in the game, that's reflected through its great dial and ability to block. Like that's part of it. But also, we wanted to have some things to show off, like what can an experienced pilot do with this chassis. And the RZ1 and the RZ2 are not that different hardware-wise. I mean, one is obviously an evolution and improvement on the other.
The link you sent me is
but they're
missing
not,
this exact
completely
box
different
we're
ships.
currently
In the same
discussing
way that the
on stream.
T65 and the T70, they're different. But if you've flown one, you might have some tricks that you can transfer to the other.
Sure, yeah.
Get to the point,
and so,
people.
The RZ1 and the RZ2 are much the same. So the Starboard Slash came out of that idea that it's like, well, there should be cool stuff you can do in an A-Wing that you can't do in any other ship. And we want to do a lot more of these as time goes on. These, just sort of like, it's a chassis-specific thing, especially for ships with chassis that appear in multiple eras. So, like, I would expect to see one of these for X-Wings, probably. Maybe.
Yeah.
Now we had a really hard time thinking of any chassis that has been promoted
some X-Wing
outside of the A-Wing.
Upgrade in this pack as well. So we've talked a lot about positioning. We also have
that
a
you
really
could
cool
be flying them on a computer game as well.
For T70s in here that really harkens back to
Which
the very beginning
brings
of The
me
Last
to
Jedi.
the
Poe takes on a Dreadnought all by
new
himself.
Upcoming
and he's got this really cool overdrive thruster
where you can pilot those things.
Kind of takes things up a notch.
And so a lot of that's combined with the Black One title, but this lets you take it even further. It's sort of strapping this giant engine onto the back of your ship,
trusting the
blasting
goodwill
yourself
the people
around.
are showing for that game at the moment. I reserve judgment until I've played it.
It's just it is a very aggressive card, shall we say.
Yes.
You're going to go
Yes,
in
Dutch,
fast.
actually, and it's getting worse.
If you're using Poe,
no microtransactions as of now.
With him.
Everything
and,
you can earn in the game is earned through
Snap
playing.
if you wanted to, and have Poe there with him, and then
Hey,
have
Jarvis.
Snap get
Yes,
tossed
they
for red
are.
action by Poe, which could be like a boost or something.
I know
and
they
then Snap
want
can
to
do that
fill
longer
a
boost.
whole hour with content.
So there's a lot of interesting
I
uses
think
with
this is
especially
hurting
with new
the
Poe
thing
and his
more than
ability
it
to
helps.
throw some actions out to other ships as red actions, because it needs to be red actions to trigger this.
But to be honest, I wouldn't know how to make it better myself. Maybe
see what happens.
Get someone who
has.
has
I feel like that's probably a pretty good taste of Heralds of Hope.
That seems good. Yeah. And Heralds of Hope is like a pretty good taste of a concept you're going to see more of in the future.
Oh look, where are my notes?
Yeah, for sure.
On what page are we?
Okay, so
I can't miss.
We start off talking about some. I don't know, let me think all the way back there. About we had the First Order with the G-Class shuttle.
Mm-hmm.
We had a couple Clone Wars era ships that have been announced a while ago. Moved into the TIE Brute, Heralds of Hope. Now we're talking about just even more Clone Wars ships for both the Republic and Separatists.
Yeah, where do you want to start?
Oh, okay. Let's start with one of my favorite ships, just kind of in general. Let's start talking about the Eta-2.
Oh yeah, the Eta-2 Actis.
Yep,
Imagine
Jedi
Jerry commenting on that
more
stream.
Seen as an interceptor, perhaps.
Yeah, it's a really interesting ship. So this
care
is
to say anything?
This is one that Brooks designed, and it has a very different niche from the Delta 7. And we knew at the outset, when I was designing the Delta 7, I said I know I need to leave space for the Eta-2 Actis. So like one of the things was like there were a number of things on the dial where I was like, okay, I'm gonna make this dial actually a little bit worse than it might have been if no other Jedi high maneuverability, high performance Jedi starfighter existed, because I want to leave space for the faction to grow and have that. Now the really interesting thing about this is so it's got the dial of an interceptor.
There's nothing to hang on over there.
It's got the action bar of an interceptor.
Once you pass 40, it's over. Have a good one.
What a lot of interceptors do, which is that ability to double reposition after maneuvering.
Yes.
I wonder why they have chosen to model this fighter that way they have done. This ring is purely for hyperspace travel. There is no need in a dogfight to have that
you have the
thing.
ship ability that allows you to perform, during the system phase, you can perform a purple barrel roll or purple boost. So you have to commit early to your
would mean
one of
I
your
would
two
have to get up,
if you want to double
get the
reposition.
painting station, get some
and remember, you can't do
water,
the same one twice, so you can't
and when I start painting, I probably
barrel
won't
roll
stopping
in the
until
system phase and then
I've
barrel
some
roll in
result,
the-
and I
after
really
you
need to
maneuver.
go to bed.
So if you do one, you're locking yourself out of that one later too.
I will sit this one through.
It's very powerful, but it takes some planning, takes a little bit of skill.
Takes some planning, gives your opponent a little bit of an opportunity to react to it with their own reposition.
Yes.
and creates sort of this really interesting dynamic. So the funny thing about it is, compared to the Delta 7, the dial is faster, like more maneuverable. It's better dial. It's got a couple of purple maneuvers, as we discussed, which are maneuvers you have to spend a force point to execute.
So we have green, red, purple, and blue maneuvers right now.
Yep.
I can't follow.
And so it's got a
Last
very
time I played,
open,
I had a green,
dial,
a red,
but it doesn't have as much
neutral
ability
maneuver,
to reposition
white one,
after the fact as the Delta 7 does. So the Delta 7, there's sort of two ways of getting to like similar results, but they feel very different at the table. And they're different to fly against too, because the Eta 2 is sort of weirdly slippery, because you have to remember that it's not exactly where you think it's gonna be.
Yes.
But once it has maneuvered, it is more predictable. So it creates a really interesting dynamic to fly against.
Cheers to everybody who is still watching.
One of the cool things about this ship in particular is you actually get 2 different miniatures in the box.
Yeah.
We have the Eta 2 Actus itself, and then we actually have the Hyperspace Ring in there.
3 in
Unfortunately,
total,
we don't have a render
Tomorrow
of the Eta 2 separate
dates,
from the Hyperspace Ring just yet.
First and
the Hyperspace Ring just yet.
But they are definitely 2 separate miniatures.
But they are definitely 2 separate miniatures. We will have that. Hopefully by the time we get the preview article out, so everybody at home can see that.
Which I'm tempted to skip.
Tell us a little bit about
it's going to be similar like this.
Yeah, so the Hyperspace Ring is a really interesting
unannounced
thing. It has
products,
sort of an interesting origin where we knew it was
really
something we wanted to do
about,
at some
and
point.
I think
we
one
weren't
of them
quite
will
sure
be
when we were going to do it, and it
Lord
sort of
of
the
the Rings
opportunity came up with this
related,
product.
according to the
And we were like,
in-flight
okay,
report
let's do
from
this
yesterday.
here. Let's get this in when we're getting in a couple of the ships most known for using it. The
I was
Eta
talking
2
with
and
Ben
the V-Wing.
in the forums under the
now
article he has written.
It is also interesting because it's
he
not
was
the first,
thinking
but
it
it
may
is one of the first
be
pieces
some
of content
sort of
included
rank
in
and
a
file
standard product
Lord of
that
the Rings
is
game
not going to be in Hyperspace or
would be
Extended.
amazing.
So it's really designed for epic battles, it's designed for casual play, and it's designed for scenario play. And that's really where it shines, is like scenario play.
You're
and
tempting
epic
me
battles.
to buy that model
because it lets you create
solely on the
really,
purpose of
like,
painting the
interesting
ring
setups. You're
golden
like, okay,
and
I know
engrave
my
some
opponent's gonna be
elven
going after the
writing on a
objective
doctor.
marker there, so I'm gonna like wait, late commit, have my thing hyperspace drop in then, and then I can protect that objective, or I can go after this objective near their back lines or something. So it's great for especially games on like a 6x3 for some of the larger epic battles games. It's great for having a little more like positional control and ability to be more of where you want to be. But it is not going to be usable in Hyperspace or Extended.
Herrgott sagt Zement.
Obviously in casual
People
play,
get on with it.
have fun with it. It's a fun little thing. It plays well. It creates a neat dynamic. And the ring itself, so the ring itself, when the ship is docked to it, so the ring itself is also
was
a
that
ship.
the other thing from
And the other ship
FFG?
can
I
dock
can't
to it, and it
remember.
uses a very abridged version of that ship's dial to sort of very slowly maneuver around. It does provide the ship a little bit of protection, so you can like drop it in with the ring, expect the ring to get shot off.
It was.
And then
But
the ship
maybe
can, like,
they will
maybe
do
survive
something
hit
in
that
a
way.
different scale.
So
that
there's
would
some
be
cool uses for that,
actually
again, especially
cool.
epic battles, where like maybe you bring
Imagine
a couple of these things in, and then
Lord of the Rings,
you let the rings get like
War
shot
of the
apart, and then like
Battle of
Anakin
the
and
Ring
Obi-Wan and
was
Ahsoka come
Jedi
flying out and
10
start,
millimeter
shooting things up.
rank and file.
So there's some really like cool cinematic
on
stuff.
square basis.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems like you said. I mean, you already said it was like this kind of fun little thing that you can do in these like kind of different scenarios and everything.
But I don't.
Yeah, and again, in epic battles, it's like really cool because it like can often let you get a big, sort of like, if your opponent knows you have it, they have to be like more cautious about their positioning, because it's like, oh, they can jump that thing in over there, so I gotta spread some things out a little bit more. So it creates more of that like sort of like strategic back and forth that epic battles really thrives on.
Mm-hmm. And forgive me if you already said this, but I just want to get it out there in case you didn't. But the Eta 2 isn't the only ship that can dock with the Hyperspace Ring, right? The Delta 7 can as well, and the V-Wing, which we're going to talk about in just a moment.
Legion doesn't have dials, Taurus, so I doubt they would do something like that.
The Hyperspace Ring is
hopefully
it's just really cool. It looks great on the ship, like and especially seeing it with like multiple different ships and how good it looks with the different paint schemes and all that. So
yeah.
I'm looking forward to like the repaints people will do for like the different ones we see too, and like Clone Wars and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've talked about the Eta 2 in general. We've talked about the Hyperspace Ring. Let's get into some more specifics. One of the things that kind of struck me when I first kind of looked over all the cards and everything for this ship was it really focuses on a lot of team ups. Yeah. So we're going to show the Anakin Skywalker ship card here. And he has this really nice synergy
Doctor,
with
I think
and it's a direct.
GW
it's like a
has
direct
actually the movie
so it's not,
license.
generally, we tend to
and
do soft
else.
synergies where like
so
two characters' abilities
somebody
will naturally
else were to
complement
pick
each
up
other. But we can do these sort of like hard
original
call-out
IP,
effects.
I think
and with these two, we really wanted
fine.
to, specifically because. So this is like the Revenge of the Sith ship. That's really the only place we see it. That's its main thing, and it kind of is so heavily associated with that movie. And that movie is so much about the relationship between Anakin and Obi-Wan.
Exactly.
Like that is sort of the emotional heart of that film. And so we wanted you to really have an incentive to like fly these two together. Mm-hmm. Now you don't have to fly
two A-2s.
Wow. to get these benefits, because both Anakin and Obi-Wan have abilities that specifically call out a friendly Obi-Wan or a friendly Anakin.
Yep.
So they have these sort of like cross-pull abilities, and you can bust out other versions of the characters if you want a little more list diversity,
deep enough
which is cool.
in it.
But we really liked the idea that like these two characters are really like like again, they're like friendship, and the deterioration of that friendship is really the heart of that movie, and we wanted to really push that idea and play that like you want to have these two together.
Yeah, let's just try and give these guys maybe a little extra boost.
Exactly.
It was very cool.
On the subject
of
minis, Doctor, I think the
Anakin
current
and Obi-Wan.
miniature packs for the
Star Wars.
It's not the only iconic team up.
Lord of the Ring game
we also
by
have
FFG
R2-D2.
are basically
hangs out with
like
Anakin quite a bit.
And this is
the
R2's
movie
first
versions,
non-pilot appearance
so
in the
there
Republic.
has to be some leverage.
You can team him up with C-3PO as a pilot if you want. So when he's R2 pilot, you can throw C-3PO crew in the pilot in the crew slot. But so we've got a new version of R2 Astromach. This one for the Republic. And this is sort of like R2 at the his most, I don't know. This Revenge of the Sith is the movie where he's doing all sorts of crazy stuff. He lights those battle droids on fire. He flies around. He takes over like a whole dreadnought. So this is like the most flexible version of R2, but it also doesn't have that many charges.
Yeah, only two. Only two.
Yep. But he can kind of do anything. He can get buzz droids off of you, so if you're sick of dealing with those, this is your R2. He can get you shields back. He can get rid of damage cards, but he only does it a little bit.
I really would like to know what DLGW did back in the day when the movie came out.
You got a lot
that they are still clinging
he's a strong
to
card,
it.
and you only get a deplete token from it. So it's very strong
is
effect as well.
Lord of the Rings being played that well?
Yeah, great. I mean, so it's very exciting. We got Anakin Obi-Wan, Anakin R2-D2, got all these iconic characters kind of teaming up, and I mean, I'm just excited that we finally get R2-D2 just as an astromech for the Republic, which I'm sure a lot of people have been waiting for a long time.
R2 done.
He's not going to be cheap.
Next.
He's not going to be cheap, yeah.
But he's going to be worth it because again, any problem you have, he can solve it.
Sure. Yeah. He can help you out in a lot of different ways, more than just regenerating a shield, perhaps.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the Eta-2 Actus expansion pack. Let's move on to the other Republic expansion.
Really would help this kind of stream
Nimbus class
if these two were
which is very cool.
Had some kind of electric shocking device attached to themselves, and if the threshold of babbling reaches a certain amount, you can hit a button and they get a shock.
The pilot card we're going to show is a pretty iconic Star Wars character, maybe not as most people recognize him, maybe a little bit before that.
Yeah, so Willow of Tarkin shows up in the Clone Wars television series quite a bit. He and Anakin meet up, and Anakin's like, "Oh, this guy's got some pretty good ideas," and you sort of see the writing on the wall there. So Tarkin is this is the younger, more still very much a man of ambition, but not quite so ascendant in his power.
Yes.
Tarkin, when he's a little bit more hands-on, might actually fly a ship himself. But we wanted to give him a very commandery ability, obviously. So he's got this lock sharing ability that is much like Tarkin's lock ability in his crew version from the Imperial era.
For sure.
And yeah, this ship is interesting because it is very much the like proto TIE fighter from a lore perspective.
Yep.
But it has a lot of features the TIE fighter doesn't actually, which is one of the interesting things too. Like in
Yeah,
terms of
Tuffy, that
performance,
could
it's
very
a higher
well be
spec
that
ship in a lot of
GW
ways.
still has to
And
make
the TIE
money
fighter
on
is actually
that
like a
IP,
reduction of a lot of those
though
features
I
just down to like
doubt
the
it.
barest
bones,
essentials.
I think they somehow
so it's got lock, doesn't have white barrel roll, it's got red barrel roll instead, so it's a little less maneuverable.
License
and then it's got that boost lock, which is really nice.
That's very nice. Yeah, and everybody will have undoubtedly already noticed the twin ion engines ship ability, where you can ignore the TIE ship restriction on upgrade cards. We're not showing one on the stream right now, but
boy, is this some more foreshadowing?
It is more foreshadowing. I believe you will see one of those TIE ship upgrades in the announcement article just coming up here right after the stream. So again, stay tuned for that.
Right after the stream, he says.
Yeah. So then, again, like we really like the idea of having these like upgrades that play to various things, and here's another thing that feeds into that. Yeah.
And so yeah, the V-wing. Another cool thing about the V-wing. Is it also comes with a couple different configurations, so you can it's even more flexible than
those
that.
guys need to pick up the pace.
So the V-wing has a couple of like canonical functions, and one of them is that it can be equipped with these like inbuilt ion cannons. But the other sort of like function is it can actually have bombs. And so we're showing you that one.
Yes.
Which is the Alpha 3B Besh configuration. So this is the like sort of more multi-role version, whereas the other one's a little bit more of a specialist.
Yeah.
And this is the one that gives you a nice little boost to your attacks, and then also gives you the bomb slot.
Yeah, it's very cool. Yeah, I remember when I first saw this, I was like, oh, that's interesting. Normally like little fighter like a V-wing doesn't have bombs.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, the V-wing does a lot of things. It's one of the really interesting things about it as a ship is if you go through the materials about it, it like does a ton of different stuff.
Yeah.
And again, you can sort of see like, oh, the V-wing was this sort of like evolution on a lot of the like the Clone Wars era ships, which tended to be like pretty multi-role. They tended to like do a lot of different things. Whereas the Imperial era ships tended to like have a lot of that stripped back, and so it's sort of the last like, the last of these ships that's like really this like multi-role thing.
In about 9 minutes. They really need to pick up the pace.
Very kind of flexible
I don't
ship
think
for
they will
Republic.
go very much longer.
I like playing Republican X-Wing a lot, so I'm very excited for all of this.
I think there'll be a lot for you here.
All right, let's move over to the Separatists.
Yeah.
So we get a couple new ships, including the Droid Tri Fighter. I remember, this was months ago, but I remember I helped play test against the Tri Fighters.
Nice.
And I say this in the best possible way. They were a pain to play against. They were a little kind of a nuisance there.
They're nasty. So the Droid Tri Fighter is a really interesting ship. It is. So normally, like droid fighters are defined by a couple of things. They have pretty good dials. They're worse at banks than turns.
The most is they are showing new ships and they're not showing the dials.
Like lurching to the side, but not actually good at like subtle turns.
We're just going in.
That would make the ships much more interesting.
And they tend to be discount. They have not great stats. They have usually pretty good action bars, but like poor stats. And they tend to be cheap. This thing does not have poor stats, and it's not that cheap. Like, it's somewhat expensive, but it's supposed to be really nasty. These fighters
here I sit and hesitate.
They've got this like sort of predatory intelligence built into them. They're very smart for droid fighters. They're very like coordinated.
Short question for the chat. Do I get up and get myself another view, or do I?
They have
some high initiative generics too.
Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned, they're very intelligent. Everybody will notice here in a second that they, like a lot of separatist ships, they have network calculations. The one that we're going to show you, DIS-T81, kind of takes network calculations and can do maybe a little bit more. He can spend 2 calculate tokens from other friendly ships nearby, right?
Yeah, exactly. So that's what this effect does. And it's very solid, unsurprisingly.
You should have
especially
said,
if you've got maybe a couple of Tri Fighters backed up by a couple of Vultures generating cheap tokens for them. And then your opponent has this tricky choice of like, do I go after the Vultures because they're going to be easy to kill, or do I go after the Tri Fighters because they're going to put a lot of hurt on me?
Yes.
And yeah, that 333 stat bar You know, like a 3-hull unshielded ship sort of doesn't look that scary, but with networked calculations, we weren't sure when we made the Vulture droid if it was going to be possible to make a 3 agility networked calculation ship without having it be like destabilizing.
Very good, yeah.
And we did a lot of testing, and we found that, yeah, at the right price point, it is fine. It's not overpowered, but it is quite good. And certainly, like, if you have a couple of these guys backed up by some vultures, you can have this like list that has this swarm effect that's quite nasty and like pretty reliable defensively, even if it doesn't have focus.
Okay. Yeah, and speaking of networked calculations, you know, just because I like to tease things a little bit, we don't have the card, but I believe in this pack there is an upgrade that might change network calculations a little bit.
So there's an upgrade, and we've done a few of these upgrades that mess with ship ability in upcoming waves. But there's an upgrade that lets you replace your networked calculation ship ability, and you can take it on anything with networked calculations.
Okay.
So if you have, it's really designed to. I'm not going to get into the specifics of what it does. One, because I don't want to misquote myself, or misquote the text, and two, because
don't troll me.
I like the suspense.
Exactly.
But it allows them to operate a little more independently.
Picture when I left.
And so it's this, you know, it's another card that Brooks designed, and it's just a really neat one that's got these like cool, you know, like implications for your list building, because all of a sudden you're like, oh, maybe I want to do some Nantexes. Well, they don't necessarily benefit all that much from networked calculations, but I'd like to have some cheap ships.
Yes.
Oh, well, I swap in this more independent operations ability, and suddenly these go better with this other thing, and so you have some interesting like opportunities
ships.
there.
Nice, yes.
Problem is, point
know,
costs are not on the cards anymore, so until they have
what kind
released
of
new points list, we don't know.
Modification?
Yeah.
Okay.
What it be?
So there we go. We'll take up the modification slot.
Yep.
All right.
Did they pause talking, Tuffy, or was it a buffering issue again?
Pieces in there for the Tri Fighter. Let's move on to the final expansion we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah.
Jango Fett's Slave 1.
So we knew we'd wanted to do this since we started the Separatist faction. I mean, Jango is in an interesting place because, like, he's only kind of a Separatist, but, like, he does work for them. He does do a lot of stuff with them. He also dies right when the Clone Wars starts, so, you know, he's a little like, you know, Maul. He's sort of in that, like, early Separatist movement group. But he does fit really nicely in that faction. And he gives that faction some like really interesting stuff to play around with, because this is sort of, the Fire Spray is a very different ship than anything they have. It opens up some really interesting list building possibilities.
Yeah, it's not a droid, obviously, so we have like really heavy emphasis on droids. You know, there are a couple.
I still like the Slave 1 paint job on Boba Fett Slave 1 better.
But yeah, Jango, he's his own kind of bounty hunter, this kind of like rogue a little bit, so he doesn't easily fit in with this faction, which opens up a lot of kind of interesting things.
Yeah, definitely.
3 more minutes.
And one of the cool things about Jango is we can show his pilot card here. He's in Initiative 6.
Yes, he is. Yeah, so the Separatists have been a bit short on Initiative 6. They've gotten the 1 with Sun Fac, but that's been it so far. And so now they're getting another. Yeah, Jango is quite good. He's probably, at least based on what we've seen testing so far,
I'm always annoyed by people going,
quite as powerful as Boba. Boba's passive mod ability is so
I know
good.
I do it myself more often.
Even with Initiative 6, simply because the ship's ability to maneuver and reposition at Initiative 6 isn't quite as beneficial as it would be on like an Interceptor chassis or something like that.
Stream from last night, while it lasted, when they read their scripts,
he has, you know,
that was
quite a bit of punch.
Much more pleasant than this.
He creates some pretty interesting hard choices for the opponent, where they have to think about like, okay, what are you going to want to do this turn? What do I want to do? And now what do you think I want to do? What do I think you want to do? Etc. And it just gets across the fact that he's sort of this, you know, like, he's this normal guy who's able to fight against Jedi and do pretty well for himself, unless it's Mace Windu. He's also one of the characters who's involved in one of the most iconic space battles of the series, maybe the longest by simple time.
Yeah.
That chase is a good 6-7 minutes
It takes
long?
a good chunk of time, yeah. So it introduces a lot of like bombs and things.
Exactly. And so we wanted to really do justice to that character who gave Obi-Wan such a hard time. In that space battle. And of course, he's not the only character from that scene who we are going to show you today. There's someone else who played a very important role in that scene.
You've talked a lot about, Boba Fett, unaltered clone of Jango Fett. And this kind of, I don't know if you can say it's a tradition, but with the Naboo Royal Starfighter, we got a younger version of Anakin.
Yep.
Now we're getting a younger version of Boba Fett as a gunner. And one of the really cool things, I think, is he kind of follows this pattern within this expansion where a lot of the upgrades can be equipped on Separatist ships or Scum ships.
Yes. Yeah, so there's a lot of characters who are sort of in this bridge zone for Separatists and Scum. We've played around with multi-faction characters before. This obviously isn't our first foray into that, but Boba Fett was a pretty obvious one where he's Separatist, when he's with his father, but then in Clone Wars, we still see a lot of child Boba Fett because he's on his revenge quest against Mace Windu. He gets these other bounty hunters together. He goes on these hunts. So we see a lot of him as a real, really deeply into the Scum faction after he's sort of cut ties with the Separatists. I guess he never really had any with the Separatists. He just, was with his father who was with the Separatists.
Yeah, it's kind of association a little bit.
Yeah, and then that association gets broken, so he stops being a Separatist and starts doing his own thing and becomes a Scum character. And there's a lot of scummy stuff and Scum adjacent stuff in this product. Because the Separatists and the Scum do have a lot of those close ties. They do work together. A lot of Separatists hire a lot of bounty hunters. And there's a lot of people who can sort of flex back and forth between the two in that era.
Yeah. A lot of scummy stuff.
I think I will
mention that,
get myself hold of a copy of this stream from FFG
keep going back to there.
And make an MP3 out of it, and every time I need to fall asleep quickly, I will put this on.
He's also in here. You'll see his upgrade card in the announcement article, I believe.
Nice.
Just stay tuned for that. You have anything else you want to say about Jango Fett and the Slave One?
Oh, please.
Not really.
Don't make that voice.
I mean, it's an exciting ship to have out there. Again, we knew we wanted to do the Jango paint job version of the ship as soon as we did second edition, and we knew we were going to do Separatists and Republic. So it's just exciting to see something that we've been talking about for 3 years finally happen.
Yes, it's finally coming to fruition here, so that's very
exciting. And the stream is finally getting close.
So we've got a little bit of time left. If there are any questions in the chat before we wrap up here.
No, you don't.
Let me check
Stream is
to see
over.
if there's anything. Okay.
Nobody's.
This is the last chance, everybody. No? Oh, okay. One question I did actually see earlier with purple maneuvers. So you explained how they worked. You have to spend a force token in order to perform it. Let's say you have locked in a purple maneuver and you don't have any active force tokens. What happens then?
Same result as a red maneuver.
Okay. All right. Very nice.
Cut stream, cut losses.
Structure.
Oh, what is a structure? Thank you, Ryan.
Wouldn't you like to know? Structures are an upcoming game feature. And that is all I can say for now.
There we go. Yeah, you just have to stay tuned.
Upcoming game feature.
I'm just gonna. I know we've been hinting at a lot of stuff.
We're getting space stations.
I don't believe so.
Yeah, good question there.
It's been a while since I've seen that miniature, but I'm pretty sure they're not. If they mean do the wings fold down.
Yeah, I believe that's what they mean.
I don't think they do.
I did see.
What's the future for Epic Play?
Yeah, actually, if we want to talk about that a little bit. I believe, and I can't remember which ones right now. Maybe you remember.
This could be interesting.
I think it's the A2, the V-Wing. Maybe there's other ones that they also. They have a lot of the standard upgrades, but there's also some new wing upgrades in there for Epic Play, correct?
Yeah, so the future for Epic is that Epic is going to get supported through the main game line. There are going to be cards for Epic Play in upcoming products. It's not going to be a majority of cards, but again, things like the Hyperspace Ring, that's going to be for Epic Play, and that has some pretty cool effects on Epic Play.
Which reminds me, I still need to get hold of the
Hyperspace Ring is actually a ship, and it has one upgrade slot, and that upgrade is a Hyperspace slot, or Hyperdrive slot, which you can put a Hyperdrive into, so that suddenly opens up the ability for us to potentially explore hyperdrives on other ships as something for scenarios or Epic Play or what have you. So that's another future possibility we might play around with. But certainly for the moment, there's a fair number of wing cards seeded in throughout some of these products, and other things that are useful in Epic Play. And yeah, that's the future is that like there will be, when there's something cool that we want to do that doesn't really fit in the main game, like the Hyperspace Ring, but like is a very neat, iconic feature of the setting, it'll show up for Epic or Scenario and casual play.
All right, yeah, so we're sprinkling in just new content for Epic and like other game modes just with the products now, which is very cool. Some eagle-eyed people at home, I believe in our spread for Heralds of Hope, noticed that there are 3 single turret arc indicators. They're kind of wondering why. We can't really say right now. It may, point to
it's not an accident.
It's not an accident. There might be an upgrade in there,
yeah,
perhaps.
Maybe. There could be.
There's only one RZ2.
It's not a mistake.
It's not a mistake,
everybody. I
I
didn't see that and freak out that I put the wrong number of things on the punch board.
Yep.
Got a one for chat. How can a T70 perform a red slam action if you can only slam during the perform action step?
I will have to look into that. I honestly don't have the cards in front of me.
Shot down cold from behind.
Some rules reference or FAQ material or something.
I'm sure there's some options in there somewhere.
Exactly, yeah.
Oh, God.
I mean, okay, so we will briefly touch. We didn't really touch on it at all. We talked about it beforehand. We didn't. So the points were updated just a couple days ago. And yeah, we're working on getting all of that stuff worked out.
There should be a corrected PDF with all the things that people have pointed out.
Just don't look at the camera, boys, because you're not talking to the camera. You're not talking to 1,000 people.
I would expect. I passed over the files right before I came over here. So
yeah, and
one piece of good news we can say is that Snapshot was a typo, so don't worry, that's not changing in price.
Yeah, Snapshot staying the same, right?
Yep.
Okay. Do the Boba Fett guns move? I assume referring to the fire spray, and I don't believe they do.
I don't believe they do.
Yeah, they didn't on the original fire spray.
Yeah, I don't think that is a full retool or anything.
I don't believe.
All right.
Guys.
I think, okay. I feel like that's a good place. I mean, a lot of questions about the new app. I mean, I am aware that it's coming along. I don't really have anything to announce in terms of when that's happening.
I have no idea what I'm allowed to say about that, so I am going to say nothing.
Yep, I feel like that's probably the safest thing to do.
Simone will be mad at us.
Oh, no. Sorry, everybody. Cool, yeah, I feel like that's a good place to stop. Max, thank you very much for joining me today for this.
Definitely. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it's great. I'm very excited about all these new expansions. Let's actually give them a rundown of when to expect some release dates. So the previously announced Wave 7 expansions, the G-Class, the LAT, the HMP, those are set to arrive, I believe, at the end of September. It's been a little bit of a drought for X-Wing just because of COVID-19 messing up our production schedule and everything, so I know everybody's waited on those for a while. You can expect those at the end of September, I believe. Heralds of Hope and the TIE Brute is, I wish I would have written this down, I believe that's at the end of October. And then the new Clone Wars era ships are the end of November, so kind of 3 months in a row we're getting new content for X-Wing out to you guys, so stay tuned for that. And of course we're going to have preview articles for all of these ships on our website. The stuff that was originally announced for Wave 7, like I said, beginning at the end of August, going into the beginning of September, and then we'll just see from there. So thanks everybody for joining us today. We have a bunch of other streams going on throughout the GenCon online weekend here. I'll be back with you tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Central, if I remember correctly. We're going to be talking about Star Wars Armada. Obviously, we had a big announcement in the in-flight report.
And just add to the reschedule, they have the shipping schedule to
I believe
other countries than the US.
Oh. Yes?
Especially England is pissed.
Yeah, okay. I was just getting to that. So the website has the full schedule for our GenCon live streams, and I believe that Ryan has set it up that if you just scroll down on Twitch, you can get the full schedule there. So join us for all the live streams coming up throughout the rest of the weekend. Thanks for joining us today. Thanks for being here, Max. It's been great.
I'm going to make you call it out.
Oh.
The website literally says you're going to talk hyperspace.
Oh, the website says we're talking hyperspace?
Oh, okay. Okay. Oh. What are we talking
New
about?
content reveals and hyperspace talk. You don't have any notes.
This is bad.
What were we going to talk about with hyperspace? Did we have a plan for this? I mean, we can talk about the fact that, you know, like, why did we do the things we did with hyperspace?
Yeah, tell me something about hyperspace.
So, yeah, the long and short of why we decided to add some things to hyperspace, but not take anything out, is because we really felt like it would be unfair to pull things out of hyperspace without people really having had a chance to play them. But, you know, we know that some people are in areas where they can play. Obviously, there are places where the COVID situation has become more manageable, and so some people are able to get back to it within their regional safety restrictions. And so we wanted to make sure that there was something. You know, if we're going to do a points update, we might as well do a hyperspace update too. And, you know, there are, like, more fun, exciting things we wanted people to be able to play with, and we thought it would make, rather than just sort of let hyperspace sit fallow, we wanted to, you know, like, give people a chance to try some new stuff and freshen things up a bit.
Sure.
And hyperspace is also, part of it was also based on the fact that there's going to be a bunch of new content dropping directly into hyperspace from new products. And so some of it was to fill out factions who aren't getting anything new. So we wanted to make sure, like, okay, just because your faction isn't getting anything new doesn't mean your hyperspace pool doesn't change for 12 months, you know, because that would be pretty unfair too. So we wanted to make sure that everybody got something new, got a little something to play around with, and then also, you know, like, there were, especially the factions that didn't get as much from the new content, still got some things to play around with.
Sure. And a question from the chat here. Would you ever consider adding huge ships to extended or hyperspace? Seems
maybe.
Like
it's not completely impossible to... Okay, so, like, there's a future world where maybe we decide that, like, one or both of those formats gets weird for a season. That is actually something we could explore. We'd need to talk about it at great length with OP. It would probably need to be something we felt comfortable with the community, but maybe there would be a time where one of those game modes for 6 months got kind of weird. And, like, you know, it probably would be whichever one wasn't the main tournament track. And maybe the points value goes up and we do hyperspace or something. Or we do, maybe we do a hyperspace where, like, points values go up, huge ships and some wings are allowed or something. I don't know. I don't think it's super likely in the immediate future, but we aren't... It isn't the sort of thing we never think about. It's not off the table. Like, very few ideas are actually completely off the table. And so we've thought a lot about whether huge ships could have a place in extended or hyperspace. At the moment, the answer is no. But that doesn't mean the answer will always be no.
Yeah, you never know.
Exactly. And comparably weird things might be possible, even if that one in particular isn't.
Sure, yeah.
But again, it's the sort of thing, you'd have a lot of forewarning on it. It wouldn't just ambush you.
So you mentioned all these, like, new ships that we talked about today. Are all of these... What's the plan for those in hyperspace? Are they all going to go directly into hyperspace? Or?
So all those ships and the vast majority of the cards in those products are going to go into hyperspace. There may be individual pilots and upgrade cards that do not.
Okay.
So if there was something that we felt was really too disruptive to the hyperspace meta, either because it was just above the power curve for hyperspace, or it created some, like, very frustrating list that didn't really exist in extended due to various meta competition, but could exist in hyperspace where, like, natural predators weren't present, we might exclude those cards.
I'm really tempted right now.
So we'll always, like, tell you when with new upgrading products what is and isn't going to be in hyperspace. But it is possible that not everything in every product will go into hyperspace or extended. And I think one good thing to start thinking about too is, like, stop thinking about the game just as, like, you know, what's in standard and what isn't, and think about, like, the many different ways you can play X-Wing.
Sure. Yeah.
And, like, hyperspace and extended are two of those ways, and as you can see, we now have the column in the spreadsheet for what's allowed and what. But we've got, you know, we want to explore more, like, interesting, different ways to play the game too, and, you know, really see, like, what are the different things we can do. Epic Battles is something we want to continue to support. We know a lot of people really like it. It's a very different, narratively focused game mode, and, like, Yeah, so there's a lot of possibilities that we want to be able to play with in the future because we think there are a lot of different people who play X-Wing for different reasons.
Focus a bit more on the solo play rules.
Yeah, there's casual players.
They were really nice at the beginning. They haven't gotten updated.
Well, and even within tournament players, there's people who sort of like the idea of maybe a more traditional narrative first miniatures event, and then there's like more people who prefer the sort of more chess-like, 90-minute match, right? Like even within the people who want to go to an event and play X-Wing all day, there are people who want different things, and we want to try to cater to all those people as much as we can.
Absolutely. So we're going to do one more question, and hopefully, if I don't say this question right, please repeat it in the chat. But I saw a very interesting question in here. You're talking about different things coming into hyperspace, maybe extending it into huge ships, and like all the different possibilities that are out there. One interesting question I saw was, have you ever considered having an upgrade or a ship have a different point cost in one format or the other? So
we have certainly considered it and talked about it. That is absolutely something we've discussed. The short answer is, there are a fair number of people who do like to play the game without the app and just use the spreadsheets. And it would just be another level of complexity. And we've talked about it, and the answer to date has always been, it maybe benefits a few individual ship and upgrade cards selectively, but it probably doesn't make the health of the game itself so much better that it's worth introducing this fairly confusing new thing, because it is fairly conceptually confusing.
Yeah.
So it's something we've talked about. It's not impossible or like absolutely off the table 100%. We've talked about it seriously on the dev team, but the short answer has always been that the benefit would really have to outweigh the pretty substantial
probably
complexity it brings.
Without any
and that's always the case, right? With errata,
because
with
he's
points formulas,
talking about
with all these
something
things. Like,
knowing
the benefit always has to outweigh the complexity of the solution.
About it.
Seems like a very complicated thing that you have to keep track of, and
not just keep track of it, but like figure out how to implement it properly in a way where it actually helps. Because if we do it and it doesn't really help because we don't have the data to properly implement it, then it isn't really helping.
I think they would only need one presenter, and
it helps a particular card, but it makes the game less playable overall.
Take the devs at hand.
Really a gain?
Yeah.
Shows them through the show.
It's something we've absolutely discussed. Most weird, interesting ideas we've just it's
pretty out there.
It's pretty rare that I hear now. I do occasionally.
And the trouble is they are restricting themselves about talking about things
that one's
because
definitely one we've discussed, talked about, and decided for the moment it's not something we want to pursue. It could potentially happen. I think it's about as likely as huge ships and extended, so not likely.
Wow.
But it's not like. It's not like a dumb idea. It's just there are barriers to implementing it.
Okay. Yeah. Well, never tell anybody who.
Don't tell me the odds.
You never know.
Is the phrase you're looking for.
All right. Cool. I feel like that's a good little hyperspace discussion. Thank you for keeping us honest out there, everybody in chat.
Yeah. Sorry we forgot that.
Yep. Very excited about all the new expansions and kind of forgot about
so many of them.
Yes. So. Thank you, Ryan, for keeping us honest as well. Appreciate that.
Ryan always keeps us honest.
Yep. Thanks, everybody, for joining us at home. I'm not going to run through the whole spiel again, but please join us for the rest of our GenCon online live streams. You can find the schedule on our website. Thank you for joining us today.
Armada tomorrow morning.
Armada tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Central Time.
Yes. Now that's a mouthful. To cut it short, this was quite rather disappointing for myself because basically they didn't show anything new that they hadn't shown in yesterday's stream, which was more condensed and informative for my personal taste. Thank you to everybody who was in chat here and all those that are still. As always, this thing will go onto the YouTubes just shortly after this when I have downloaded the video. I'm really hesitant if I want to go through this again with Armada tomorrow. I will make that a short-term decision. The Legion thing and the unannounced products will definitely happen, but Armada 50-50. Tuffy, Doctor, whoever is still in chat, thank you for being here. I'm calling it a day. Or a night. Whatever suits your time zone. Tatty bye!